Can you hear me?
Sorry, yes, my phone. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. So I won't take up too much of your time because you obviously provided me that document, which has got quite a lot of useful information in. Really, what I'm trying to establish is what went wrong with the company.
Yeah.
Because we have to report to the creditors to sort of give an overview of that. Obviously, David Rubin and partners are dealing with the assets.
Yeah.
So it's for us to just look at the cause of the insolvency, and I also have to make recommendations as to potential directors' disqualification proceedings. And that information goes to a different team who would review it, and potentially that could be taken forward. But at this stage, we're just gathering information.
Okay.
Not to say that would happen, but it's a possibility that down the line someone might contact you. But yeah, it's just to sort of find out a bit more about what happened really.
Okay.
So yeah, thanks for the document that you've sent over. It helps contextualise everything. So I can see the company was formed in September 2017.
Yes.
Was this a sector you've been involved in before?
Software development, yes, and then kind of worked. I've traded cryptocurrency personally for a while before that. So I think I was. Sorry, I'm just grabbing a pen. I basically. I had a good working knowledge of cryptocurrency and the problems associated with trying to just be a normal citizen and buy Bitcoin and not be labelled, questioned by the bank and all that stuff. So like I really saw the business case for this, and I think that we had set off with the intention of helping kind of affluent people who didn't really know anything about cryptocurrency to firstly understand it and then potentially trade with us. So that was really the kind of intention of the company.
Okay. So were you involved in the development of the app yourself?
Yes.
Software?
Yes. I didn't write any code at the beginning, but yeah, I mean, I've been a part of a software team for 15 years prior to that. So as soon as I finished my master's degree in artificial intelligence, I joined a startup, and then we raised some money and did that for a couple of years, and then we had to close the business, and then another software startup. So have had an experience of starting companies and raising capital and in developing software.
How did you come into contact with Mr. Sanderson?
So when I was halfway through my master's and I needed a job, and he was looking for someone to drive him around because he'd lost his driving license at the time. He was a property developer, still is a property developer, and I ended up working with him on and off for about 7 or 8 years back in 2001, 2002. And so then when I put the concept together, he'd invested in one of my other companies kind of 5 or 6 years before. And when I presented him with the business plan for LBX with a view to him recommending some investors, he immediately said, no, I'd like to invest. I can see that this could really work, and I'd love to back you.
Did you say that you started off as a driver for him?
Yes.
And you did that for 7 or 8 years, did you say?
Well, I crashed the car after about 2 months, and so he said, I think your talents are better suited in the office. So I then basically had a kind of, apprenticeship with him, and and sort of watched how he did things. I worked for him as, initially his kind of IT consultant, and then I ended up being director of sales for one of his companies, and then I did a number of different roles with his companies for a period of about 7 or 8 years.
Okay. So what was your main role for this company, and what was that of your other directors?
What, for London Block Exchange?
Yes.
I was the managing director. And my colleagues, my other the other directors, we applied for regulation by the FCA, and it was stipulated that we needed kind of 2 other directors. So, so they joined. I think kind of midway through 2018.
Were they employees before?
They were not. I think payroll. Jono was on payroll, and Adam was a consultant.
Okay.
And Adam basically was an old hand from the city, so he'd worked in kind of big investment banks and and basically did a day a week.
Okay.
Jono was full time.
With decision making for the company, would you have had overall control, or did these 2, did they get involved in things as well?
I was in control, so they reported to me and I made the decisions.
Who was responsible for anything to do with tax?
So the responsibility would have been mine.
I'm not sure if you can hear, but it sounds like someone's chopping down a tree or something outside, which is a bit distracting.
Yeah, I can slightly hear. It's like a little buzzing.
Yeah.
Are you working from home?
Yes. We've been working from home since the end of March, so it's a little bit. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. So it's just a bit of noise in the background. So I'm just looking at our system. Do you know roughly how much the company owes to HMRC?
At the last check, I think it was about £60,000 of payroll. However, as you probably saw in my note, we were expecting a significant rebate from the R&D tax credit.
That never materialised then?
It did not. Not through to trying.
Yeah. And
it was a timing piece rather than anything else.
Did you pass that information to the liquidators?
Yes. Yeah, the liquidators were the same people who had been advising me from, I think it was like February 2019.
Yeah. In terms of the advice, did they send anything in writing to you to sort of confirm what you've discussed?
Yes, although I don't have access to my emails, but they may well have copies. So I can ask them.
Yeah. I was just interested about whether or not the company was insolvent, and the fact that you were seeking to sell the company, that meant that it wasn't insolvent. Would you be able to expand on that a bit for me?
Yeah, so when I first approached Mr. Cooper, I took him through the books. I think at the time we were being approached by a company called Blockchain, who were interested in buying the business. It was a bona fide third-party offer. And I talked it through with Paul, and Paul was like, if your company is in the process of essentially being sold, then you're not deemed to be insolvent.
Okay.
Is that consistent with your understanding?
Yeah, I can see the logic to it. So yeah, if there was something put in writing, I'd just be interested to see what it said. Not to say that that wouldn't be correct if it was coming from them, but just out of interest, really. So the blockchain deal you said fell through.
Yeah.
Why was that?
I think the shareholder Johnny and their offer were out by about £1 million. So
what actually was their offer?
I think it was between 1 and 2 million. I'll have to check my notes.
Okay. 1, 2 million.
The other thing, they were going to give us shares in their company, and it wouldn't have expunged the debt.
Okay.
So, and I had approached some of the creditors to ask if they would consider a debt for shares swap.
What did they say?
No.
So I think I saw in a witness statement the company's turnover was about 500,000. How far away from profitability do you think you were?
In the witness statement, what I've just sent you.
One of the court witness statements, I think.
Oh, right. How far from profitability? Well, given that we had kind of significantly reduced our overheads, I think we were expecting profitability in about 2 years, according to our financial model, but had obviously reduced costs significantly and kind of kept a skeleton team to continue to run the exchange. It's a good question. I don't know the answer, and I can check.
Okay. And so was the understanding that Mr. Sanderson would just sort of fund any shortfall until that time, or?
No, he said I'll do what I can, but he was in a position where he wasn't able to continue it turned out over the course of that year there was no additional funds from Mr. Sanderson.
Yeah.
And so it became a process of identifying potential buyers, talking them through the financials, getting their interest. I got letters of interest from 2 or 3 of them at least, and all the way up to kind of the end in December with the company BitBay, which was a large Polish exchange that's been going about 7 or 8 years, and was ideally placed to buy the company, but they didn't want to let the market know that they were acquiring a UK exchange, and so we'd signed a non-disclosure, and in court we weren't allowed to basically say. We were kind of able to say it is a Polish exchange that wants to buy us.
Yeah.
But it didn't go through, obviously, because the judge didn't view that was sufficient enough to warrant any more time.
Okay.
And obviously, when I've spent kind of 3 years fighting for it to kind of have that outcome was not very satisfactory, really.
So that was the basis of the CVA?
Yeah.
The court wasn't satisfied?
Yeah.
Okay. Did they give any reason as to why they weren't satisfied with that?
I wasn't at the summary. I think it was just very late on the Friday night, and it may well be in the summary that there's more information about it, but I don't know. I'd have to check and see what was said.
I've seen in a letter that was sent by Mr. Sanderson, he's listed some debts of the company that were disputed. I was just wondering if you could elaborate what they were to do with. So there's one that's listed as stobs.
That's the trademark consultants who helped us trademark the LBX brand and defended us, acted as our lawyers against a claim by London Stock Exchange.
So what was the disputed part?
The disputed part was, so under advice of our lawyers, they said that stobs were actually not allowed to give advice because they were not actually lawyers.
Okay. So the invoice wasn't paid on that basis?
Invoice was not paid on that basis.
The London Stock Exchange win the case, or as the company changed its name, was that sufficient, or what happened?
So basically, they didn't win any case. We wanted to push it to the IPO court. The cost of doing so would have been about £50,000 for us. had we won, we obviously would have got that back. But we basically didn't have the funding to challenge them.
Yeah.
And there was, we had, I think, kind of successfully proven to them that their trademarks were too broad to be of any use, and so we had applied to have their trademarks cancelled, and this kind of obviously angered them, because obviously they don't want to, they weren't trading cryptocurrency, and they weren't involved in blockchain at the time.
Yeah.
And they weren't offering any goods or services relating to, cryptocurrency. So we had a good case, I think, and yeah, it was a shame that we weren't able to defend it properly. And the second advice that I got, they basically advised, they said, look, if you're going to go and fight this, you definitely don't want to go into the court with your name being London Block Exchange, because then claim, if you lose, brand infringement, and that adds to the liability of your company unnecessarily. And if you do win, then you can change your name back. So, on the basis that we were looking to save as much money as possible, we took that option.
Yeah. And then did they not pursue the claim, or was it ongoing at the time the company went into liquidation?
They stopped pursuing it because we had changed our name, and I think that they were surprised by that. I didn't sign a settlement agreement. They were pressuring me to do that. And eventually they just stopped, really. So
Oh.
I think they would like to have, I think we were talking about reaching the point where we would kind of agree quietly that we would use the name for 18 months on the block exchange and then cease use.
Okay.
And so, but instead, I decided to change tactic and just change the name immediately, and just use LBX as the name of the company.
Fair.
Can I ask you a question? Do you want me to put that into the timetable, or are you comfortable with what I've given you so far?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay.
Yeah, the main point of concern, really. I'm sure you're aware. I've seen a thread from Peter McCormack talking about whether the company was trading whilst insolvent.
Yeah.
Making various sort of allegations.
Yeah.
And obviously that would be, if that was proven, that would be grounds for misconduct if creditors lost out from the company continuing to trade. So that's the sort of main thing that I'd be looking at, really. But
sure.
From what you said, if you were acting on advice and there was a sort of reasonable prospect that the company might be sold, there's an argument that there was a benefit to carry on. So that's the crux of it, really.
One of my ex-employees admitted to giving Peter McCormack confidential information, and then that information basically being taken out of context, and in fact his series of tweets were unbelievably damaging to our prospects of and so
I found this on the web for a...
Sorry, my phone. And so, as helpful as he thinks he might have been, it did increase the challenge of finding a suitable buyer, no doubt. And, the allegations that he made in those tweets were both defamatory and libelous. And, I've been advised to pursue it once everything has settle down, because he, he paid by other exchanges in the space. So he's paid by Kraken and he's paid by a big US company. And he knows that he can act as the, instigator and rile people up, and so the whole thing was kind of a very unprovoked attack, and and I asked him to take it down, and he refused to give me his service address, and and he continues to chase me, which is kind of
Okay.
Are you into crypto?
I sort of have a vague interest in it. I've never tried to buy any myself, but one of my friends actually has a crypto exchange in America.
Oh, cool. Which one is it?
I don't know if you've heard of them, CX.
Yes, I do.
Yes, they're based in Chicago.
Yeah, they're one of the new high-speed exchanges.
Yeah,
amazing.
I don't know too much about it, to be honest, but my friend's Edward Woodford.
Right.
So
English? Yeah.
I pay a bit of attention because of him, but I don't know too much about it.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing sector, and it's constantly evolving. But they've got a brilliant product.
So I have a bit of an understanding of the sort of process that you go through as a start from conversations I've had with him about how they're getting on.
It's hard. It's really hard work, and I think the thing that for me I was surprised by was the level of extremely greedy and aggressive people who wanted to put me out of business from the start.
Really?
And it became a very, very stressful environment. So like the other exchanges, CoinFloor, Coinbase, they were very, very anti-competitive. What's the word? Like, the CEO told someone I know he was making it his life's work to make sure I was destroyed and put out of business. The guy at Coinbase was similar in terms of saying, we were very worried about you, and they did a kind of, how do we say, a positive PR campaign, but made very bold promises just before we were due to make an announcement. Like we were the first crypto exchange with a UK account, and 24 hours before we were going to announce it, Coinbase announced that they were going to have the first UK bank account in 6 months' time. And then there was the other part of the whole thing was we wanted to launch a prepaid Visa card linked to cryptocurrency. We had done our research. We'd seen that a lot of the players were using a company in Gibraltar called Wavecrest, and Wavecrest, we signed up with them. We paid them £60,000 or whatever the fees were, and then we announced the market that we were going to be using their services. And the PR was incredibly successful. It was, we had we launched it through Business Insider. It was translated into 17 languages, and we were like the first proper Bitcoin UK card. The only problem is that Wavecrest hadn't told Visa that's what they were using the card for. This one down here. Oh, back doors. Yeah. Fine. See. Sorry. And so, Wavecrest basically were doing something outside the scope of their permission, because they hadn't had it approved. They put us on the same program as kind of like 20 other companies. They weren't supposed to do that. And then over the course of the next kind of 4 or 5 months, their business just unraveled because Visa hauled them over the coals. And so that didn't work. And it was painful. They eventually settled with us and gave us 15 grand or 20 grand back after legal fees. So there were kind of, a number of significant challenges with, starting this up. None of the major banks would bank us. And so then we kind of became attached to CFS-ZIP, who, significantly overcharged us, but that was the only provider in town. So we didn't really have a choice. But they were very nice, but then very, very, very inefficient. And would do things which I didn't think were permissible under the FC rules, which was, if we were late paying, they would withhold customer funds when customers requested it. And then we would then have to explain to customers, your money is coming. There's a banking problem. And the whole point about e-money is that operational funds and client funds are treated differently, and that one should not be used as a bargaining chip to unlock the other.
So those sort of cash flow issues that the company was experiencing, what would you attribute that to?
I think it was a few things. I think, Johnny, the initial investment of, 2 million, we spent that in about, I'm going to say 7 or 8 months. And then Johnny raised money from his network, for another like 1.6 million. And it just, it was just Johnny funding it basically. And then I kind of went out to the market and found a couple of smaller investors. So, it's a startup software company is very kind of cash hungry at the start until it starts making money. And that was sort of the point. It was, money was coming in as fast as it was going out. And the challenge was really just, making sure that the creditors were in general happy. Up until the point where, clearly Squire Patton Boggs had, called them all up, got them to join the petition, and basically scuttled the ship. And it was, my lawyer said that it was extremely cynical and completely unnecessary. And I think part of the reason was that, Russell Hill had taken a personal vendetta against me, and because I had basically said, I don't want your insolvency advice, thank you. I've got someone, and I was like, he had done a very hard sales job on trying to get me to do a prepackaged administration after, I'd sort of shared the financial health of the business, and he was very, very dismissive. He said, I've seen lots of companies in your position, and they all say they're going to raise money and none of them do. So why don't you speak to my friends at Resolve, and they can get you out of this. So it was very odd having a lawyer selling in insolvency services kind of aggressively. It just didn't feel right. I'm like, well, if I go through the process you're talking about, that means that none of the creditors will get very much at all. Your mates will get the company and will get a bit, and I don't understand why you do that. So, and then I think the other problem was that then Johnny agreed. I spoke to Johnny and I said, please can you pay this bill from your personal funds, and for whatever reason he didn't, and so then that gave them a chance to put in the winding up petition for such a small bill. So that was the sort of the emotional piece, I guess.
Mm.
And I basically, if what ifs would be I think that the source of the, ending of the business was really a mistake by Johnny to pay the bill on time. Well, it was already late, but to transfer the money on time. And then, the very public arrangement of information by someone like Peter McCormack, which basically gave us a bit of a sentence. And although, I worked incredibly hard to kind of find, potential buyers, we just weren't able to in the time. And I think, the other thing is we'd appointed a accountant who had not done an R&D tax claim of that size, and didn't know the tricks, didn't know how to, prepare the right paperwork, because we were due a £600,000 claim, and had he submitted it correctly, and I'm not blaming him because I think I appointed him and I was responsible, and I just didn't know that that there was a requirement to kind of complete things in a very detailed way. It meant that we got put to the back of the queue, and it took them 5 months to basically, normally when you submit an R&D tax claim, there is a 4-week review period, if I remember correctly. And at that time, HMRC were behind with all of their reviews. And so you'd call up and they'd say, now we're working on submissions from May, now we're working on submissions from June, and then July. And then it took them, 5 months for them to come up, start asking the questions that we actually should have answered the first time round. Yeah. And then that's when I went to, one of the big four accounting firms, BDO, Story Hayward, or BDO, I think it is now. They said, we're really sorry, love to help you, but we can't work with a company that's got an existing winding up petition. But we can recommend another firm called Leighton. And we went to Leighton, talked through it all. He said, you've got 3 distinct projects here, which are all more than capable of winning a significant amount of the money that you've spent back in the form of the R&D tax credit. And I can give you the names of the people there if that's the kind of thing that would be helpful.
So why did it not materialise?
Just timing. So we were in the process of finalising the submission in January of this year. And by the time the court case came, we had not submitted the claim.
Okay. So did the court not take that into account?
Well, they did, but they were like, well, we don't, I don't know why they didn't, but I think the point was that there was not, had the claim come in as we had proposed, the view was that there was little prospect of this business working, let's say. Which I think was, I was very surprised by the outcome of the court hearing, but,
Yeah, so there were a few adjournments then. It was originally in February 2019 and it went on till January 2020.
Yeah. Well, my lawyer basically said, Squire Platt and Boggs have behaved in such a way that, this is unacceptable and we need to make a complaint about it. That's one piece. The other thing is that they reviewed the actual bills that Squire Platt and Boggs had submitted and reviewed the work that they'd done, and they said that this is completely disproportionate. Actually, there's only about £1,500 worth of work for one of the documents and about £2,000 of work. He said, so if anybody can challenge a legal bill in the senior court's costs office. And so we went down the road of basically saying, we'd like to challenge these bills. We'd like to get this winding up petition struck out because we don't believe this is, firstly, fair or, So we went to senior court's costs office, and they basically said, this is a small amount of money. You need to see if you can settle it between you. And Squire Platt and Boggs basically were like, we're not settling anything. And so the onus then was on them to, I think it was on them to, bring the next court date forward. So it was very, very acrimonious, and it was very, very painful, and over such a a petty amount, given the amount of effort and energy, and I understand the whole process, but then they basically, I think because I had effectively insulted Russell Hill, he decided his professional integrity was on the line, and he was going to put the full weight of his firm behind it and put me out of business. That's how it felt. Whether that's true or not, who knows. But certainly, they were up to all kinds of dirty tricks, like they put my passport copy of my passport in the public domain. They refused to pay to have it replaced. You know, I mean, it was just like, it's just one thing after another. So that was the outcome.
Appreciate, obviously, you know, there's a lot of things that have gone on. It sounds like quite a complicated journey, really, and you have to try and get out of the situation. But if you were to attribute the cause of the insolvency to one thing, or if you were to summarise sort of succinctly what went wrong, what would you say it was?
I think a lack of ongoing funding. I mean, you know, a very, very soft market like the crypto market basically crashed months before we launched. And so while there was, you know, a lot of interest, it didn't really pick up. And then I think, you know, there were a couple of other like events which definitely dented the, you know, there was I've referred to it in my document, but there was a fraud that was quite a complex fraud, which I've reported to the police and have a crime reference number, from someone who kind of posed as a investor and, you know, put in money and, you know, subsequently so I'm sorry, I haven't answered your question. I think there were a number of contributing factors, and I think that I don't know which one was the single event that meant that we had to go through the CVA or propose the CVL, sorry. Is it CVA or CVL?
I think you put CVA in the document.
Is that the liquidation, or is that the administration?
Yes, administration is generally to try and save the company, and it just gives a sort of breathing space so the creditors can't pursue the company. Whereas the CVL would be, sort of a similar process to the one that we're in anyway. But it's just, the director would be the one to suggest it as opposed to a creditor.
I understand. Yeah, I think it was a CVL. I'll have to check my notes, but yeah.
Okay, so in general terms, the lack of funding and a crash in the market, would you say, were the main things?
Yeah. Because I think if there had been a extremely strong response in the way that we had hoped, I think we would have been a lot more flexible and been able to manage the cash flow better.
So how did the company actually sort of advertise for customers, or?
So we had a number of different things that we had started, and it was predominantly online. We also took out adverts in the newspapers and billboards, and we had a very good PR agency who was generating stories for us on a regular basis. We had a very good newsletter which was shared virally. So we built a database of customers who were initially just interested in cryptocurrency news, and then that basically fed into the funnel to try to get them to register and sign up and do the onboarding. So that was sort of the kind of marketing stuff.
Okay. So did this company make money taking a share of each trade?
Yes. So we charge between 2.5% to 3%.
Was that pretty standard, or was that competitive?
Coinbase at the time were 5 to 8%. They didn't really show their prices. So yeah, we were competitive, which is why I think they were scared about us, because we were coming in and undercutting them, and we had onshore UK banking and
covers pretty much everything I wanted to ask, I think. What was Rackspace used for?
Rackspace was the server and security. So we basically looked at Alpha Point. Alpha Point offered their own server infrastructure, and we reviewed it and we decided we just don't feel comfortable using their hosting, their server stuff, because it's got security holes. We shared with them the holes and the flaws. They ignored it, and so then we had to take the decision to use our own UK-based server farm with Rackspace, and so then Rackspace basically reconfigured the Alpha Point system to make it robust, and that was a cost that we just did not factor into the start. I think a lot of if I was to add to the previous question about kind of what was the reason for the insolvency, I would say, poor selection of the exchange provider. Again, they were the only people in town who, white labeled exchanges. And, our instincts were right in that when we kind of came to the end of the line with Rackspace, they were like, look, we're really sorry. You've used this for 12, 18 months. And we were like, look, we can't afford this anymore. And we switched back to using Alpha Point. Alpha Point basically, a couple of months after that, Alpha Point were hacked. It was about $55,000 or $50,000 or whatever the amount was, which was predictable. I mean, we went out to go and see them in New York, and they, the guy in charge of the cryptocurrency kept all the passwords in a Google Doc, and we were like, "Are you serious? Is that really your security system? This is I'm really embarrassed." And then we kind of went through this process of, after the hack, they were like, "You can't tell anybody. The insurance will cover it. You still owe us some money, so we'll keep the cryptocurrency." and and that's it. And can you sign this piece of paper so we can get the insurers to pay us? So it was like they really had us over a barrel, and I had been disputing. There'd been a dispute pretty much from the beginning. We'd signed a 5-year agreement with them, and it was very difficult to get out of. So that was one of the kind of sources of the failure, I think, as well.
Okay.
I mean, what I hadn't really factored was just how big a surface area there is in running the crypto exchange. Although we'd done a lot of planning and looking at kind of like the 10 different risk factors, once we had lost some key members of the team, it became harder and harder to keep the wheels on and keep the exchange running, and it progressively degraded. There were just so many different fronts really to try to solve. So while we'd launched with a beautiful app and we got our initial customer base, the challenges were not yet really, the longer term challenges had not really resolved.
Okay, I just want to ask about the other two disputed debts from the list that I was given.
Yeah.
There's Gavin Pereira and the Clear Obtarian Limited, or Deering Obtarian.
Is it Doug O'Barton?
Yeah, possibly.
So Gavin Pereira, while we were developing the platform, we created a utility token, which was called LBXU. We sold it. It was a token which was designed to be spent on the exchange to reduce commission fees and get other kind of bonuses for customers. We wrote a contract. Was it a contract? It's kind of like a contract with the people who bought it. And Gavin bought, I don't know what I think it was like, however many Ethereum it was at the time, worth, and the LBXU token was then, but the project was cancelled when the business ran into difficulty, and Gavin decided that he wanted to be paid back in a sterling equivalent of the original price of Ethereum. So, and we basically said, well, no, because Ethereum's changed in price, and that's not, we're not selling something in pounds, we're selling something in virtual, in a digital currency. And then we did initially sort of arranged a repayment plan, but then we were unable to kind of proceed with it. And when I showed it to our lawyer, they said, well, he doesn't really have a claim here because, you did provide something. Yes, you don't provide the utility that, you initially set out to, but this is, this can be disputed. So, and I can check with my lawyer to see what the, specifically what was said about that. Sure.
Just for a general idea.
Yeah. And then Doug O'Barton was the CTO as a contractor. He basically we'd asked him to, I think he'd worked there for about 3 or 4 months. And I think when we went into difficulty, I said, I'm sorry, we're going to have to kind of terminate our relationship with you. But, if you're able to provide the last month of work, I can clear that invoice. And at the time, he was speaking with another member of ex-staff who had given us extremely bad advice as a compliance lady, and then took me to court through a money claim. We successfully defended the money claim and said, actually, the advice that you gave was faulty. And so what Doug had, he had his suspicion that what I was trying to do was take the work and not pay him. And it didn't matter how much I reassured him that wasn't the case. The point was that he was then, it was like, well, I'm not going to show you what I've done unless I get paid. And I'm like, well, that's kind of the wrong way around when you are working for a company. So that was kind of the point about it.
All right. That pretty much covers what I want to ask. If you can send me a copy of the CVA proposals and any business plans that you produced,
sure,
that'd be useful.
I can do that.
I think that's about it. I'll go through my notes and put a list together of the things that I've jotted down I wanted you to send me. Have you got any questions for me?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm preparing the document that your colleague sent. What is the time frame that this normally goes through until it's either, released or whatever? Like, I don't know what the technical word is.
Yeah. So for the liquidation, the main thing is usually the asset side, because that can take longer, depending on if there's anything complex to recover. I mean, I've not asked about the assets because there's a liquidator in office, and that's for them to consider, really. But from our side of things, we would send the report to creditors within a couple of weeks, and put the information in, pass it on in the same sort of time scale, and then it's just whether that gets flagged up as a case that should be looked at a bit more, and you would expect to be contacted within about 6 months usually, if someone is going to take the case forward to consider director's disqualification.
And is that so? Would the creditors be the ones who would request further clarification, or?
Yeah, they could do. So if I send the report out with what you've told me, and they consider that there's information we haven't been made aware of, then they can come back to us and sort of provide any information. But in terms of the direct disqualification, it's really for us as an organisation to think, whether it warrants it. And then someone would engage with you for that process. You could provide more information, discuss things in detail, and then if it was going to be taken forward, a report would be put together for the Secretary of State to agree if we wanted to go to court if need be. But it's a long way off that stage, really. But it is a possibility, so I have to make you aware of it. So yeah, if you can obtain a copy of the advice that were given as regards whether the company was trading whilst insolvent, on the basis that you're acting on that advice, I can't see that it would be taken forward, because it's about what the information that you had at the time, as opposed to looking back. Now the company's in liquidation, and And if you were given advice by insolvency practitioners to continue, then yeah, I can't see that it would be taken forward. But it is a different team that looks at the information we give. So if you can send me the documents, I can put it all on the system, and then it'll be there for people to read when they consider what to do.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks very much for your time. I will send you an email just asking for a few bits, either today or next week.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot. And yeah, if there's anything else you need, just please don't hesitate to call or
Yeah, we'll do. And yeah, if you've got any more questions, feel free to get in touch.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.